Shalom, everyone. A very good Sabbath and Hanukkah Sameach to you, a blessed, joyful time of remembrance and prophetic preparation. And that's really what this week is. So good morning to all who are joining us by virtue of the internet, and I pray that your day will be blessed, as this is the seventh day, the second day of Hanukkah, and a time of great import in the kingdom of heaven. So welcome to this day. All our friends from Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana and surrounding areas, thank you guys for faithfully showing up and being here. I know many of you have had illnesses and traumatic things in family and life, and my heart goes out to you, and I'm so encouraged by the fact that you're here, despite all the things that are going on, and you're ready to pursue the things of our King. This is the week of the ninth Parsha, Vayashev, and we have a lot of ground to cover as usual. I'll try to tell some stories today. I got a little detailed last week, and I had a lot to unload, a lot to offload, download, and I know it was a bit much. I'm trying to tell a few stories today, and so we'll hopefully get into the Parsha a little bit that way. This is what I call the Parsha of Messianic Imagery. We're beginning to enter into the final phase of Sefer Bereshit, which is known to most people as Book of Genesis. We're in the last few chapters of it. And what that means is that we are shifting focuses, we're shifting awareness of what's happening from our lives in this day to the end of days, to the latter days. And we're going to see this every book of Torah. It will be repeated. We begin with a seasons of introductions and beginnings to where we are. And then the book takes us into the center of the meat of the book, which is the substance of where we catch up and how this impacts our daily life. And then we get into the latter part of the book, and that is the end of days, prophetic aspect of it. 5 times the pattern is repeated, 5 books of Torah. Here we are in the first book, and we're about to get to that final stage of the book of Genesis. The Parsha of Messianic Imagery. We need to be looking for Messiah. I like to talk about a set of books that my children read or we bought for them. I don't know whether they read them or just looked at the pictures. But they bet the books were called Find Waldo. And anybody remember, and the guys here, you remember Find Waldo books? Anybody remember the Find Waldo books? Find Waldo books were basically, there was a lot of imagery, a lot of background, a lot of pictures, a lot of phrase, and the idea was in every page, somewhere hidden in amongst all the busyness of what was going on, there was this character called Waldo. And if you knew how to look, if you kept looking, if you were diligent in searching, in the midst of all the other things that were going on, in the midst of all the other characters, you could see somewhere the trick was to find Waldo. Well, that's really what I want us to do with regard to Parsha Vayashev, and next week Parsha Miketz, beyond that Parsha Vayigash, and finally Parsha Vayechi, the final 4 Parshas of Genesis. Not Waldo. Find the Messiah. Find the Yeshua. Find the Mashiach that is promised in Genesis chapter 3. That has been the image, the purpose for which everything has been introduced, that we would know him, that we would walk with him, that we would trust in him, that we would have confidence that he will arise, that he will bring redemption, that he will bring restoration. And we are his servants. We are his secret agents. We are his ambassadors. We are a part of what he is doing as long as we're here upon the earth. Parsha of Messianic Imagery. Look for the Messiah hidden in all the backstory that we're going to read about. I call it the time of hoping for redemption, of bringing, awakening in ourselves a hope of redemption. I know this is a trying time in the natural realm, in the news broadcasts, in the political spectrum, in the religious area we're in. Everything that it looks around, it looks like it's a very difficult, trying time. But we have a certain calling that empowers us basically commands us, impels us, compels us to rise above the trying time and to have in our hearts and then in our mouths and on the complexity, the complexion of our faces, the countenance that we carry, a hope of redemption that stuns and startles the world, that awakens some hope and some desire in other peoples that don't have that to be able to see it. The hope of redemption and restoration, birthed out of stage-setting transactions in the marketplace of human misery. Birthed out of stage-setting transactions in the marketplace of human misery. If you see misery, human misery, if you see catastrophes, if you see difficult times, if you see political intrigues and battles, and you see economic shifting and uncertainty, know this: the Messiah is about to arise and bring redemption. Know this: he is closer to us today than he was the last time we looked, and he is really, really close if we know where to look for him and find Waldo. So that's basically what this Parsha is about. We will be reading, or we won't have time to read it actually aloud. We'll be talking about Genesis 37:1 through 41:23. Genesis 37:1 through Genesis 47:23. We will be hopefully hinting toward a section from the prophetic books, Amos 2:6 through 3:8. And we will be hopefully giving a sort of an introduction for your own study to Acts chapter 6 through 6 verse 1 through chapter 7 verse 16. And from the standpoint of prayer, we'll talk about some of the prayers that may be the focus of our activity, hopefully before this day's over. But here's what I want to start out with: something big, really important is about to happen. We are on the cusp. We're right on the brink of something that is world changing, that will shift the atmosphere, that will change everything that we know about life, and will change the impact we are able to have because our King is able to have in the world. So what is this really amazing, what is this really important thing that is about to happen? Heaven knows. The councils, the courtrooms of the heavenly courts, they have been talking about this since before the foundation of the world. But we are uninformed. We are caught up in the day-to-day drama, what the news tells us, what the doctors tell us, what the politicians, what the economists, what the theologians tell us. We are all caught up in a rat race and argument. We're frustrated about this and frustrated about this. And the angels of heaven, I believe, are sort of like leaning over the balcony of heaven, saying, "Wake up! Something big is about to happen. You need your wits about you. You need to be aware. You need to be paying attention because you are at the center of this. You are part of the plan. You need to be alive to what's going to happen next." All right. I told you I was going to tell you some stories. Let's start with this story. The eldest of 12 brothers. He looks around. It's a blended family. I mean, 6 of them are like him. 5 others are like him. They're the sons of one mother, Leah. And they at least understand each other. They have the same mother. They have the same bloodline coming through their mother's side. They at least understand each other. But then there's this other group. I told you there was 12. There's this other group, and it consists of 2 spoiled little ones that they just seem to get everything they want. I mean, there's Joseph. He's Rachel's boy. He's the eldest. He's the firstborn of Rachel, and there's something about him that really gets his daddy's affection tied up in it. I mean, why does Jacob love this guy so much? What am I, chopped liver? What have I done? Well, let's don't talk about that because I have done some stuff. Let's don't get too detailed, but in general, why does he prefer the son of Rachel, the son of Rachel, to me? And then there's that little brat, little bitty brat. I mean, his mother died in childbirth. Rachel died in childbirth, and so he gets everything. He's like the ultimate spoiled child, Benjamin. So here I am. I'm Reuven, and I'm the firstborn. I should get all this attention. I should get all this. I mean, why those boys are getting all this? And then there's those ones we don't really know how to deal with. There's Dan and Naphtali and and Asher and Gad, and don't tell anybody, but they're illegitimate, okay? There's Dad and some concubine, some slave girl named Bilhah, another slave girl named Zilpah. We don't consider them part of us. But me and my brothers, Shimon and Simeon, and Levi, and then there's Yehuda, Judah, and oh man, we got this thing going on here, Zebulun, and we got this thing going on. We know what's happening, man. We showed those folks at Shechem, right? They messed with our sister. They should not have done that. Don't mess with us. Don't mess with the sons of Leah. Don't mess with. And so they took Dinah, our sister, and they did unspeakable, horrible actually one of them. Actually, it was just one of them. They were a bad bunch, but only one of them did this. So we showed them, man. We told them we were going to enter a covenant with them. And they believed us. They bought it because they thought we were honest and upright people. Well, we are, of course, but we had to avenge our sister. I mean, there was this one situation that needed a special treatment. So we had to do this. And so we deceived them and told them we were going to enter a covenant, but all they had to do was get circumcised. And then we knew what was going to happen. They were going to be all sore the third day, and we could go in there. And so we went in and we not only killed the guy while he was weak, and we not only killed the guy who did this to our sister, we did every other single person in that city. We showed them. And then we burned the city down, and we took their women, and we took their children as slaves. Well, that was cool, wasn't it? Wasn't that fun? Something big's about to happen. Something big's about to happen, and we sowed the seeds for it a few months back. We sowed all the seeds in it. And maybe it should be expected. Look, this idea of judgment and vengeance and doing what's right comes naturally to us. It's biological. We feel like we ought to know what's right, what's wrong, and punish the people who are doing the wrong. And right? It's just what our culture does. It's what our people do. But you're saying that maybe we're called to something higher than that? You know, one thing I did learn off the story for just a second. Anytime you hear a human being talking about right or wrong, or justice or injustice, or morality or immorality, understand this. They are not talking about right or wrong. They are not talking about morality or immorality, and they are not talking about justice or injustice. They're talking about getting their way. They're talking about having their will done and inflicting as much pain on another group of people as they possibly can. There is no exceptions when a human being uses those terms. You are going to get the Shechem scenario. You're going to get a vengeance reduced on the people who weren't even involved, but who can be associated with that process. And so here's Yehuda, here's Reuven and Shimon and Levi and Yehuda and all these brothers looking around at each other. And what we basically got is one household, but three camps. We got the camp of Leah, we got the camp of Rachel, and we got that camp of those others we don't talk about. And somehow over the top of it, over the head of it, we got our dad. He's getting older. He ain't what he used to be. Old gray Mary ain't what he used to be. Jacob, they're going to call him later years. And he's kind of at a place where he's settled in. He's got 12 boys, 12 strapping boys, so he sends us out to do most of the work with the sheep and the goats. What is our family? Our family, we shepherd. Is what we got. We got flocks. We got goats. We've got camels even. We got donkeys. We got oxen. But that's what we do. That's who we are. We just break up into our camps. We take our flocks out where they are. Okay, I told you I'd tell you a story. So, and then just shift the turn. We're going to a different tent. And there's this other boy. He's the firstborn, Joseph, they're going to call him in later years. And he is the firstborn of Rachel. And he is now looking out around at as the camp where his daddy has all. And he sees these guys. I don't know what to think about Reuven and Levi and Shimon and Yehuda and those guys. They're kind of hard to deal with, you know. They're all judgmental and critical about things, and they're very rough and tough and vengeful. And I never feel really safe here. I never feel like I'm really welcome in their company. And brother, I got to take care of my little brother. He's just little. I got to take care of Benjamin. I got to make sure they don't get him because they don't look at him very pleasantly, and they don't seem to have any affection toward him whatsoever. And then there's the 4 sons of the bondmaidens, and I mean, you know, they just don't have the work ethic. I mean, I like to see things done right, Joseph says. I like to see things done excellent. Some call me a perfectionist, but I like to see things done well. I like to see things neat and clean and packaged and according to plan. And what my father says to me, his will be done. And there's no room for slacking. And here's these 4 sons of the bondmaiden, and they just don't take it seriously. So I guess we'll all have to live here in this camp together. Fast forward, 3rd scenario. 3rd vision. 3rd story. Courts of heaven. Angels have been ascending and descending on the earth. They're reporting to the creator of the universe in his chambers. Trouble in the camp. It's brewing. He says, "Oh, I got this. I got this." He said, "But you know, those boys don't like each other. They don't trust each other. Some of them are thinking bad stuff, and others are just too caught up in doing the work, and they don't know what's coming." And just, I've got this. I've got a plan. So we got 3 camps going on, basically. Maybe you call it 4. The first camp is the camp of Yehuda. The second camp is the camp of Joseph. And the third camp is the camp of the bondservants' children. And the 4th camp is the most important one of all. That's the camp of the angels, the camp of the king, the camp of what's going on in heaven that's unseen by the others. They do not know what's going on in the camp of heaven. And that's sort of where we are right now, right? I mean, I want to now extrapolate what I just told, the story I just told, to tell you where you are. There's your side of the political divide, of the family divide. There's your side of the ideological positioning. There's your side of the religious argument. There's your side of every personal agendas. There's your side. And there's their side. There's those guys, those girls. There, that side of the family, that side of the aisle of politics. There's that side of the religious spectrum. There's that side of the personal agenda basis. There's us and there's them, and then there's those other people that just are in the middle and they don't know what they are. They just don't really seem to care. They're just caught up in their own daily life. There's the 3 camps. Praise the Holy One of heaven. There's a 4th camp, and that 4th camp knows the end from the beginning. The 4th camp has a design and a plan and a strategy, and to use all the camps, and to touch and bring healing and redemption to all the camps and all the people in all the camps that will receive it. And now that's where we are right now. I hear all the news. I hear all this the moaning and groaning. I put something on my feed today, and it just everybody will be starting to sing. Maybe who knows if they'll sing it this year or not. Joy to the world. I woke up the other day and I saw something and the J had fallen off. and instead of saying joy to the world, it was like a sign, and the J had fallen down, and it was like oi, oi, oi to the world. Hello out there. What's our message? Oi to the world. What's your message been this week, this month? Has it been oi, oi vey, oi no, oh no to the world? Or has it been, no, there's something, a confidence building in me. There's a strength, no matter what happens, no matter what unfolds before my eyes, no matter what is going on, the king's camp, the holy camp, the angels' camp knows exactly what's going to happen, and something big is about to transpire. And it's going to be about redemption, not about condemnation. It's going to be about restoration and not about division and hate. And we can't make this happen, but he knows exactly what it takes for that to take place. Isn't that good? Well, that's how the story of Vayashev really gets started. I want to ask you to stand with me. And we'll read from chapter 37 for a little bit. I like to stand as we read these portions. Not out of habit, I really like to take a moment and think about why we're standing, who we're standing for. The Torah tells us, know who it is before whom you stand. And that's one of the statements that's usually made in my family's tradition. Know before who it is before you stand, before whom you stand. You don't stand before me. You don't stand before each other. You don't stand before this fellowship. You stand before the creator of the universe who wrote these words and sent this message to all of creation and all of mankind. Open our eyes, O Holy One, our God, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from us, for our souls cry out for your just judgments at all times. Amen. From chapter 37, beginning with verse 1. Now Yaakov dwelt in the land where his father had been a stranger, a sojourner in the land of Canaan. And this is the prophetic narrative of Yaakov. Joseph, a 17-year-old son, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's concubines. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Yisrael loved Joseph more than all of his children, because he was the son of his gray hair, his old age. And so he made him a garment, a coat of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all the other brothers, they hated him. And they could not speak peaceably to him, a word of shalom to him at all. And Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please, Shema now, this dream that I've dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. And then, behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and your sheaves stood around it, but then bowed down to the ground. And they bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And so they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And then he dreamed another dream yet, and told it to his brothers. And he said, "Look, behold, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." And so he told it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" And his brothers envied him. They've hated him 3 times. Now he envied him, but his father kept the matter in his mind. And then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Yisrael said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come now, I send you to them." And so he, Joseph, replied to his father, "Hineni." English, "Here I am at your disposal. I will go." You may be seated. Thank you. There's trouble right here in River City. Okay. In the household of the covenant. And now let me tell you another story. In about 174 BC, not quite 200 years before the advent of the Messiah, of Yeshua, in the land of Israel, there was a great infusion of Greek culture, the culture of the Grecian. The Greeks were really sort of the big culture of the day. And so they began to come, and everybody began to take on, like, people used to follow the trends out of Paris, or then out of Los Angeles, or out of Broadway, or in America. Everybody started following the ways of the Greek culture. They liked the amphitheater concept. The amphitheater was a place where you could go to get entertained. It was like a movie theater, but a big one, and they had all sorts of sports in there. It's not the kind of sports we see, but you might as well be. It's the same concept. Entertainment sports. And they had professionals doing these things, and so the amphitheater, and they had another flashpoint. They had the gymnasium, and the idea where you could make yourself, with diet, with exercise, with care of your skin, you could make yourself feel better about yourself. You could build the body beautiful. And so the amphitheater and the gymnasium began to take over in popularity among the people of the covenant, even in Israel. Among some, because some were saying that's not really who we're here for, what we're here to do, what we're here to be, and what we're here to focus on. And then there was the forum. The Greeks had the forum, and the forum was where you discussed ideology and politics, and you argued and you debated over whether this was right or that was right, or which side of the aisle that we sat on, or whether we're conservatives or liberals or whatever they wanted to use, the terms they used back in those days. And this is the forum, the political forum. And the forum came, people began to bring the forum into the covenant land. And the forum became a flashpoint, just like the gymnasium and just like the amphitheater. Then, if that weren't enough, there was another flashpoint. And the Greek culture idolized the university, the public education, the formal education system. And so the university was training up in all sorts of liberal arts and ideas and concepts. And the Greek mindset is, I think, therefore I am. So they taught them to think stuff that defined their identity, and their thoughts began to define who they were. This was the university mindset, public education mindset. So this came, and now because the Greek culture was so popular and seemed to be so dominant, some of the people within the area of Israel began to adopt it and say, this is right, we should have done this all along. This is where we have fun. This is how we get smart. This is how we get informed. The forum will inform us and teach us what we need to know. The education system will teach us how to think and become better people inside and all this stuff. And the university, the gymnasium will make us better physically and stronger and healthier. And medicine came out of that, special medicines to do these things. And then there was what started off the amphitheater, and we just idolized our entertainers. We idolized our our athletes, those guys, they were the one. And now you see what happened. What happened is that the land of Israel, the covenant people of God, lost the sight of, in large numbers, lost sight of what they were called to be and what they were called to do, the mission they were sent to earth to, and began to adopt the ways of a foreign culture, the ways of the amphitheater, the gymnasium, the university, and the forum. Now this is what is happening in there, and what's happening is you have two camps. You have the camp of the people who say, "Bring it on! This is good stuff, man. Have you seen the latest flick? Have you been to the gym lately? You know, what's your degree? What's your degree in? What'd you get your degree in? Who was your professor at so and so? And what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? What do you think justice means? And what do you think righteousness is? And what do you think is the purpose of a man?" And all these things are happening in this discussion. That's one camp. And the other camp says, "Hey, wait a minute. I thought we were here to be a light to the world. I thought we were not supposed to be absorbing other people's light. I thought we were supposed to be emanating light. I thought we were supposed to be energized and empowered with divine revelation, with wisdom. And so why are we borrowing stuff from foreign cultures that is all fleshly in its appeal or pseudo-intellectual as opposed to wise? Why are we doing these things?" So the two camps begin to develop, and they begin to be further and further and further apart. And the Greeks began to then take over. They actually sent their armies to take over where some of their followers, some of those who had adopted their ways, were. And now we have real problems, and decrees get issued. And it's ordered that, okay, we're gonna be on the side of those people who want to be like Greeks. So in other words, if you have a Torah scroll, it has to be found, confiscated, and burned. You think Second Amendment rights are a big deal? Don't burn people's Torah scrolls. But they said, "We're going to take and burn your Torah scrolls. You can't read it. You can't worship at your God at the temple. You can worship Zeus if you want to at the temple. You can worship any of the Greek gods at the temple, but you got to do it with pig blood, and you got to do it with pig urine, and all the things that Greeks do, because we're fleshy, earthy people. And we like the pig, especially. The pig is sort of a representative of how we think. So we like pork. And so we got to do that. That's the way we got to do it. And you can't mention the name of the creator of the universe. And you can't assume or say or state that there is only one. And everybody's got a way. Everybody's got their own truth. So you got to let everybody do their own truth in this temple. And if you come there and you try to worship the creator of the universe that you call him, you die. You will be martyred and you will die. Oh, and by the way, that thing about that seventh-day Sabbath, you know that's a bunch of baloney. It's done away with. It didn't happen. There's nothing special about the seventh day. There's nothing holy about it. And you need to understand that's part of your covenant with that God that doesn't exist, that we don't believe in. So you cannot, if you found celebrating, observing, resting on the Sabbath, you die. This is sort of a common theme. The decree of Antiochus Epiphanes actually said on penalty of death. No Sabbath observance, no festivals, no Passover, no Sukkot, no Feast of Tabernacles, no Feast of Trumpets, no special appointments, because you see all that has to do with the creator of the universe and creation and the cycles of creation he's put in there. We're trying to get you away from all that. You're going to get away from all that. So it's against the law as well, and you'll be upon punishment of death. And that thing about circumcising your sons on the eighth day, no, none of that. No, you found circumcising, you're gonna, guess what? You're gonna die. You're gonna be killed. And so basically every flash point, the Greeks had their flash points, and they were the amphitheater and the gymnasium, and these things had to be there. You had to celebrate these things. The university had to be celebrated and observed and worshipped. And the forum was the most critical thing. Those things had to be done. That was their flashpoint. That was their sine qua non. If you don't do that, then you're not part of us and you must die. But the Hebrews we had our own. And the Jewish people of that day had their own. We have to worship the one true God. We have to honor him and bless him, and we have to do everything for him. We have to study the Torah and meditate and live it before other people. We must pray to the Holy One of Israel, not to our truth, God. We must pray to him, and we must circumcise our children. We must find a way to take the energy and the power of the seventh day when he blessed it and he created and he infused it with holiness. We must find that holiness and energize ourselves, and we cannot do without it. We must do these things. We must meet with him on his appointed times. This is not parties like you have. This is not drinking place. This is times when we meet with our God. We said, and other side said, we know, and that is why you can't do it. You could have all the parties you want. Call it anything you want to. But don't say it's about a meeting with your creator of the universe. So what happens is we got trouble in River City. Something big's about to happen. And the divisions are getting really, really serious. If you haven't noticed, these two stories are one story. As Joseph will tell the baker, tell Pharaoh next week. He's going to tell Pharaoh next week, the two dreams you've had about the cows and about the ears of corn, ears of wheat, those are the same dream. They're the same dream. And so these are the same stories. The story of Joseph and his brothers and what's going to happen as a result of that mess. And the story of the Hellenists of ancient Israel and the Hebrews, the faithful ones of ancient Israel, the shining ones of ancient Israel. That is the same story. Well, there's one more story. At the end of days, book of Revelation, you read about it quite thoroughly. You see it in Daniel and other prophetic books, but there's this kingdom that arises, one world order kingdom, a one nation, one world order, one all in one. We will control everything, one great power. And some call it the Antichrist, or some call it the Anti-Messiah, or some call it the beast. But he will have his kingdom, and he will enforce everything, just like the Antiochus Epiphanes of the ancient Hebrew days, just like the dark mindset of Reuven, and in regard to the days of the camp of the redeemed. And we will see at the end of days the same story unfold a third time, at a third level, at a third degree. These are all one story repeating itself over and over again. So how does it start? What does heaven know that we don't know? Because right now you may be depressed about what I've just been saying. Your flesh may be saying, well, I don't want any part of this. I want to go home. I want to check out. I want to pop up. I want out of his here. I don't, and he says, no, this is why you were born. This is why you're born now. This is why you're born at this season in time. You're here for a particular good reason. So heaven knows something that we don't know. I'm going to talk about the conversation that Yaakov had now with Joseph. We saw the backstory. We know that the hatred. 3 times it says the brothers hated him. And then on top of that, now they envied him. Something about the coat, something about the dream, something about just the fact that he was his favorite, that they hated him. What did Yaakov see in him? He did see something in him. And what did Joseph think about that and them? And so 3 times we've heard how they hate him, and they cannot even speak a peaceable, they can't say the word shalom to him. They can't live at shalom with him. And now they envy him. And the last time we saw that word, that was the great persecution and pogroms that we saw, the attacks that were levied against Yitzhak and his family by the Philistines back at Gerar. That's the last time we saw that word. And that was described as the ultimate first taste of anti-Semitism, where they hate you just because of who you are. You don't have to. They don't have to have a reason to hate you. I remember when I was 17, and you don't have to know the backstory, but there was a gentleman, there was a young man who was 19 or 18 or 20. I don't know. He was that age. He's a tough guy, and he made it his point in life to threaten me with horrible death and abuse and dragging behind cars and mutilation. every day of my life. He wanted to make sure I knew that that's how I was going to die, and he was going to be the one who did it. And one day, he's doing his harassment of me, but he's outside of a store in public. So I have a little more courage because all my friends are there, and I'm not going to go start a fight. I really just want to know what it is. Why do you hate me this way? What? So I walked up to his car, and I said, Frank, what did I do to you to make you hate me this way? He said, Bullock, you don't have to do anything. You didn't do anything. I just don't like your looks. What I didn't know is I would still be here in my 66th year with you guys and with you guys. And he would, within 5 years, be in prison, escape from prison, commit atrocities, and be gunned down. You see, we don't know. We don't know what's about to happen. But here's the deal. Sometimes you don't have to do anything, Joseph. They just hate you because they've got some demon inside of them, some darkness inside of them that drives them in a terrible way. And there's nothing logical about it. There's nothing ideological about it. There's nothing political about it. They hate you because there's something wrong with them. Well, so we have heard the story. They hated Joseph. I mean, it wasn't just like they didn't like him very good. He was not the favorite. They hated him, and they envied him. And then there's this strange conversation between Yaakov and Joseph. Yaakov, the father, calls Joseph the favorite, and he says to Joseph, you know, your brothers that hate you, that threaten to kill you, that despise you, that envy you, you know the ones that have, you know, Frank, I want you to go to them. I want you to go to your brothers. I want you to go check on them. That'll really make them happy. I want you to go be my spy. I want you to give me a report of what's happening up there, and I want you to do it at a particular place. Shechem. We got a little history there. These boys have got a little history there. Something about this place draws out the absolute worst in them. Massacre worst. Genocide worst. Slave trade worst. And Yaakov looks at Joseph and says, son, I want you to go to them there. Joseph is not a dummy. Joseph can read the handwriting on the wall with regard to his brothers and his family. He knows something is not right about this conversation, and this cannot end in a way that's well for his physical being. So we could expect a smart dude, an articulate, brilliant, influential guy like Joseph to say, Dad, let me talk to you about this. I don't know if you're thinking, you're not thinking, but here's the deal. This is not a good idea. Do not send me off to them, and particularly do not do it at Shechem. But Joseph does not do that. Joseph says one word in Hebrew. Hineni. Shockwaves, hopefully, if you understand what he just said, will ring out through your soul, and you will realize what it means to do the will of the Father, no matter what the cost, no matter what the risk, no matter what it means to you or to your little brother who depends upon you. because your Father wills it. I told you there would be images of Messiah, of Yeshua, all through this Parsha. I want you to understand what he just said. Hineni means your will be done. It means, yes, I surrender. There is a similar phrase that was used. Everything in Torah, everything in the Bible relates back to something else and relates forward to something else. Relates back, relates forward. To what does Joseph's Hineni relate back? Hineni. First used by Abraham. When was it used of Abraham? Abraham, Genesis chapter 22. Abraham, I want you to take your son, your only son, your beloved son, Yitzhak, whom you love, up to Mount Moriah. And I want you to present him there as an olah, as an ascending sweet fragrance to me. And Avram's response was, the first time ever used in the human language as we know it, in the Torah at least, is Hineni. And so they're going up the hill in chapter 22. Yitzhak is coming. He's got a bunch of wood with him, and there's a flint knife, and there's everything they need to present an olah, except one thing. There's no lamb. There's no animal. There's no, and so he says, Father, here's the wood. Here's the knife. But where is the lamb? And Yitzhak looks at Avraham looks at his son who asked him this question. And his response is, Hineni. I am at your disposal. It is the will of the Father. And then the third time it's used in the same parsha, same study, same story. Up the hill, the altar has been built, the flames have been lit, the blade is ready to strike. The son, Yitzhak, is bound to the altar. A voice speaks out of heaven. Abraham, don't touch. He doesn't say that yet. He's about to say that. Abraham. He doesn't know what he's going to say, but he says, Hineni, whatever you speak, I will do. Whatever you say, I am at your disposal. Hineni, behold, it is me. That's the prophetic background. So when Joseph hears this word from his father that he's supposed to go and do this, almost certain to result in his beating, if not death, anguish, who knows what it'll happen. Joseph's response is, Hineni. Whatever your will is, Father. I said it's both historical. Everything in Torah is both historical and prophetic. Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah was in the temple worshiping the Holy One. Uzziah was the reformer king, the one that Isaiah had put all his trust in, and he's dead. He's been killed. And the brokenhearted goes to worship the Holy One, and he sees this great vision. You know the story of Isaiah 6. And the pillars shook, and he saw the Lord, the Holy One, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple, and the angels cried out, Kadosh, 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 the holy, holy, holy. The whole earth is filled with his glory, and everything's shaking and shaking. And he hears this conversation going on in the heavenly realm, in the camp of the heavenlies, and he said, and they hear the words are spoken, whom shall we send? And who will go for us? See, there's two questions here. One is, who can you send? And the other question is, but who will go? You can send a lot of people who won't go. A lot of us are sent, but we ain't going. And a lot of people are going, but they ain't sent. So we ask two questions that are always being asked in the heavenly courts, in the camp of the heavenlies. And one question is, who can we send? And the other question says, and who will go for us? Not for them, not for their glory, not for their ministry, not for their will, not for their ideology, not for their plan, not for their religion. Who will go for us? And Yeshayahu, Isaiah, looks up into the heavenlies and he says, Hineni. Here I am, behold me, send me. I will go for you. One more time. Yeshua, the Rabbi of Nazareth, Garden of Gethsemane. Lights coming in the night up to the garden. Torches burning, soldiers marching, coming to the camp. He knows why they're there. They come and they inquire they want Yeshua of Nazareth. English, you just say, I am, or here I am. In Hebrew, he says that very popular, very real, very important phrase. Hineni. Behold, I have come to do the will of the Father. I will go. I will go. I will go with you, whatever befalls, whatever occurs, whatever happens, whatever it does to me. Hold, I will go, Hineni. Now, this is a very important, pivotal moment in biblical history, and it is happening in this room and on the other side of this camera today. Voices are ringing out from the camp of the Holy One, the camp of the angels, and the camp of the courts of the King. And they're saying, whom shall we send? And who will go for us? And in chairs across this room, and wherever you may be sitting or standing on the other side of this camera, something is wanting to rise up within you. The Spirit of the living God is wishing to rise up within you and speak the words that Abraham spoke, and speak the word that Joseph spoke, and speak the word that Yeshua spoke, and say, Hanine! Behold, me, us, we will go. I will go for you. But your flesh, your emotions, your will, your pseudo-intellect, the things you learned in the gymnasium, and the things you learned in the amphitheater, and the things you learned in the forum, and the things you learned in the university, and the things you learned in the religious institution, are telling you, no. You don't want to do that. Argue with your father. Explain why you can't do that. Someone else should go and do that for you. And the courts of heaven are saying something big is about to happen. Something huge is about to transpire, because 1 or 2 or 10 or 20, maybe you, are going to say, I know, Hineni, I am compelled, I desire, I do nothing, I want nothing more than to do the will of my Father, whatever it takes. Hineni. There is a prayer that's spoken, actually kind of begins the prayer service in Jewish circles on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's the Hazan, the cantor, the one who leads the prayer service, gets up and I'll just do the English part. It's the Hebrew is Hineni, Hineni he'eni mi ma'as. Hineni he'ani mi ma'as. Here I stand. Here, behold, I am. Poor in deeds, trembling in fear at the dread of he who sits enthroned among the praises of Israel. I have come to stand and supplicate before you, before your people Israel, who have sent me, although I am unworthy and unqualified to do so and come. And therefore I stand and I beg you, God of Abraham, God of Yitzhak, God of Yaakov, Holy One, God, compassionate and gracious, God of Israel, frightening and awesome one, grant success to me in the way upon which I travel as I stand to plead for mercy upon myself and upon those who sent me. Please do not hold them to blame for my sins, and do not find them guilty for my iniquities. For I am careless, and I am a willful sinner as well. Let them not feel humiliated or humbled by my willful sins. Let them not be ashamed of me, and let me not be ashamed of them. Accept my prayer as if I was an experienced elder whose lifetime had been well spent, whose beard was fully grown, whose voice was sweet in your ears, and who is friendly, speaks peace with other people. Well, the prayer goes on, but I think you get the picture. Hineni, this cry of, we are sent, and we don't have time to be camps between, we're better than them, and they're not like us, and we don't have time for that. We are here to appeal on behalf of that. I love that. Do not hold them to blame for my sins. Let them not be ashamed of me, and let me not be ashamed of them. Let us not be ashamed. Let us not be condemning of other people. We are all one camp under the great camp of the Holy One. This is Joseph. Joseph's Hineni is like this Hineni that's spoken every time. Yeshua's Hineni was like that. In every generation, these two questions are being spoken in heaven. Whom shall we send, and who will go for us? In Joseph's generation, the answer to both those questions was a single one: Joseph. Joseph we can send, and when Joseph goes, he will go for us, not for himself, not for his ministry, not for his heritage, not for his personal agenda. From before the foundation of the world, you see, Joseph had been chosen, selected to be the wild card. The one wild card player for every sphere of influence to which he could be introduced. He was the wild card in the next phase in every situation of the grand plan of the Holy One for redemption and for restoration. And that plan was about to make a transition from the theoretical and the hidden workings of the mind of the Holy One to visual, revealed wisdom and grace in the world. You're wondering why Joseph got sold. You're wondering why he agreed to go. You're wondering why he put up with what he did. You wonder why in Genesis 45, verse 5, he tells these brothers, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, that many might be saved alive. And why he tells them again in chapter 50, 5 chapters later, after Yaakov is long dead, yes, you meant it for evil, but you didn't get it yet. I know. I'm not holding the sin to your charge against you in that regard. Well, this is the challenge that the Parsha presents to us. This is why I tell you Messianic hope and Messianic imagery is all through this Parsha. Why this is the final preparation for the end of days. We must have this preparation. We must have this moment of Hineni before we go off into the next stage, when the Antiochus of this next season, the anti-Messiah or the one world order or the beast begins to take and make his decrees and order it. We must be able to say, yes, we've got the Hellenists out there. Yes, we've got those among us who are not walking in accordance. And some of them are of our own blood and our own labels. And some of them are just in the world, but for all of them, we will go forth and do the will of the Father.
Well, I have talked to you about that. I hope you will see that. I want to get you a little bit more of the story. We started with the Lashon Hara. Yosef, the first reason that the brothers hated him, the first reason for the enmity, at least the first justification, was that Yosef spoke the truth as he saw it about how bad a job of shepherding the sons of Zilpah and Bilhah were doing. How he was a perfectionist. He did everything to exceptionalism. He was excellence. It was his hallmark and his watchword. And he looked at the others who were doing things that were not as passionate as he was, not as diligent as he was, not as engaged with the sheep as he was, not as caring for the flocks as he was, not as desirous of doing the will of the Father, no matter what happened, as he was. And he told his father what he saw. He didn't lie. I don't believe there was a lie in it. I think he told them exactly what he saw. He meant what he said. This is the first step of breaking away from the camp. When we don't cover our brother's sin, then we don't speak into it and admonish them, or speak into it at least and inspire them to do better and model for them what to do, but instead we go and we judge them and we criticize them. If we want to understand that as we get ready for this next stage, the next revelation of this force that will be the dividing force in the world, we must not divide ourselves by judging other people based upon other people in the kingdom, other people in the covenant, other people in the movement we're in, other people in the church, other people in the faith, or other people in the nation, or other people. I know this is an unpopular message, but I am looking at the anti-Messiah coming. I'm not looking about who gets to the presidency the next time, or who gets the head denomination that gets the most people to sign up to their group. I am talking about how we handle and get our children and children's children through the next years of tribulation. And I'm saying, first thing to learn from Joseph's story is some of these things, though we are honest and though we are truthful and though we may even mean well, we need to watch our words and our behavior toward our fellow man, toward our fellow believer, before our fellow disciple, before our fellow covenant member, before the strangers of the earth, before the pagans of the earth. We need to watch how we use, what phrases we use, what vocabulary we'll throw out. We need to watch our attitude. We need to be very cautious about how we project ourselves into the world, because you see, what you sow, you will reap. If we sow the sense of we are different and better than they are, we're going to reap it right back from them. And that's what really happened with Joseph and his brothers. His brothers began to speak the same things backwards over him. Who does he think he is? And so the first thing is, we have seen, first challenge of this Parsha is to learn, be careful what we allow ourselves to think or say about other people. Be careful how we judge. Yeshua had a lot to say about that. You might as well just learn not to judge, because to the extent you judge, if you want to jump out there and do this thing, if you want to, and I'm paraphrasing, you know the phraseology that it's really stated in your New Testaments. But if you really want to go down this road, now understand this, that with what measure you meet, with what judgment you judge, with what standard you apply, it's going to be right back in your face. And don't sit there in shock and awe. How dare they say that about me? When it comes right back at you. I see this all the time. How dare they? Well, I'll tell you how they dare. You know how they dare. Because you sowed those seeds yourself in your own private conversations and on your social media feed. And you wonder why they're coming back at you and chastising you and judging you, because you did the same thing to them. The first issue. Second issue. Joseph's first dream. Let's talk about Joseph's first dream. You heard it, we read it. Joseph's first dream was that he and his brothers were all in a field of wheat. Does that strike anybody unusual? That they were in a field of wheat? These dudes are not wheat farmers. That ain't what they do. That's not their livelihood. That's not their way of doing it. Yitzhak gave it a shot in the famine back in Gerar, but it's not what they do. They raise flocks. They raise sheep. And if you ever watched in the old Western movies, you know that there's two things that don't get along. Pasturing animals and sodbusters. Cattlemen and sodbusters don't get along. And so now, what is this strange dream that Joseph has? He's dreaming of something they don't do. They don't have crops of wheat. They have animals. They have goats and sheep and oxen and donkeys and camels. They have these creatures, and what is he dreaming? Why wouldn't he dream that they would be in the pasture or at the well with the sheep? No, he dreams that they're in a wheat field. Something's going on. Something big's about to happen. Some shift in the world's going to take place. There's going to be this big harvest that's going to involve grain and wheat. And in that time, what happens is he all he sees is that each one of the brothers is binding a sheaf. They're all involved in the harvest. Each one of them binds a sheaf of wheat. And the brothers don't bow down. The sheaves stand up, and then they bow down. And they don't bow down to Joseph. They bow down to Joseph's sheaf, because Joseph also has a sheaf of wheat. And the brothers hear the dream, and because of the seeds that had been sown, they interpret this dream, which has nothing to do with Joseph and his brothers, but only about a harvest time to come, and about a collaborative effort that actually speaks to the Messiah and speaks to the Messianic harvest that he's trying to bring about. And they interpret this dream in light of their own self-interest and their own animosity. And they begin to say, how dare you? What, will you rule over us? That's not what the dream said, right? That's not what was happening. The sheaves were submitting to the sheaf of Joseph. Well, that's an interesting phenomenon. We're having this. But what happens whenever you begin to hear things that other people say and interpret them through your own lens of self-interest and your own predispositions and your own ideas? Am I catching you now? Second problem that we have that the Joseph narrative points out is, after we have sown a negative report that we thought was true and was fair and honest and judgmental, after we've done that, and we begin to talk to other people, everything that we say, they interpret in terms of how they don't like us. We want to tell them all this great news about the goodness of the kingdom. And they immediately think, what are you trying to do to us? They have this suspicion toward us. This is what happened with his brothers, and this is what happens with us. Be careful what you say in the first place, and be careful how you tell them what is important to you, what you're talking about, because they are likely to interpret it in terms of their own self-interest and their own predispositions about who you are. You say, but the truth should be the truth. The truth is all about the messenger as much as the message. The truth is about the messenger about as much as it is about the message. And if we speak the truth in a bad attitude or without considering what they are ready and able to hear, then we are, of all people, most likely to create them, to make them run away or push the other direction. The second dream, strange dream. Okay, so Yeshua was the subject of the first dream. Yeshua is the subject of the second dream. What is this dream? In the dream that Joseph dreamed, the second dream he dreamed, he saw the sun and the moon and the stars, the heavenly bodies, the camp of the heavenlies, the other camp of the heavenlies, and he sees them, and these somehow or other, I don't know how a star or a planet or a moon bows down, but it bows down to, this time, the picture that Joseph sees as himself, but which is really talking, who are the stars really bow to? Who does the sun and the moon really serve? Told you, let's look for images. Let's look for the highlights. Look for Waldo. Dream is really about the latter days, the later part of Revelation, when he'll create the new heavens and the new earth, and there's no need for a temple therein. This dream is a very prophetic dream. But because of the animosity that's been spoken, because of the self-interest that's involved in these, and the history they've got of violence, they begin to attribute it, even Yaakov begins to attribute it to Joseph, saying, it's my father and my mother, and they're going to bow down to me. Joseph's mother was even dead. It doesn't make any sense. Joseph's mother was Rachel. She's passed away by this time. But because of, people will interpret what you say. This is why I'm trying to help us clean up our act. I'm trying to encourage you to clean up your act with regard to how you present the things of the kingdom, with what language you use, what vocabulary, with what attitude you project. Not do it flippantly, not use cliches, not throw out stuff because they're going to interpret that in light of their own experiences and their own self-interest. Learn we must walk out of revelation. We must speak the terms and the vocabulary and the words of revelation, not the words of what comes out of our thought processes in this regard. Realizing we've got to understand our audience, understand who we're talking to, understand what they've come through, what their issues are, so we can speak to them on a level they can understand. Yeshua had this amazing way of speaking to everybody on the level at which they would receive what he had to say, or reject it, but they would have that choice. And then we have the I call that dream the heavens declare dream. And then we have the call. I talked to you about Hineni and what our response is. What did Joseph think that his brothers deserved his visitation, deserved the it really doesn't matter, does it? His opinion about them did not matter. His opinion about their manner of practicing what they needed to do, the love for the Father, his opinion about their halakha or their orthodoxy of practice religion, none of that stuff mattered. Why did he go? He went because his father said, go. I need you to go. And he says, Hineni, are we ready to do this? We got to put aside some real, I know I'm challenging. That's the reason I'm here. If I were just telling you stuff you already know, why would you come? I'm challenging you. The whole point of this message, of all the messages I do, are to challenge you to say, understand that the people that you are going to, if you thought about it, they don't deserve it. And if they came to you, you wouldn't deserve it either. I love the Hineni prayer that I read to you earlier. Don't let them be ashamed of me. And don't let me be ashamed of them. Yeshua was sort of amazing, you know. He would have been invited and welcomed into the highest of society when he first showed up. The rabbis would have loved to have him sit around and talk to them. The people in the Sanhedrin would have loved to have him be a guest speaker of the process when he first came. He could have walked in the circles of the greats, of the influential. and instead, who does he hang around with? Stinky fishermen, lepers, prostitutes, hated tax collectors, broken, smelly paraplegics, paralytics. This is where he went to. And did they have issues? Did they have reasons they didn't deserve him to come visit them or lay hands on him or pray with them? Yes, they did. Many, 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 many. But he came and he went and he said something very interesting to his disciples. And he said, a little secret. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I did not come to call the well or the righteous to come back to God. The well don't need a physician. At least they don't think they do. And the righteous don't need someone to lead them into teshuvah. So here's your story. Here's your mission. Never go to anybody who deserves it. Always look out the one who actually needs something, who actually is at a stage where they're ready to receive something because they feel their own humility, their own lack. Don't try to win over the prima donnas of society. Don't try to go and spend your time among all the elites and convince them of why you're right and they're wrong. Deal with the people who are at the crisis point of life and of health and realizes they're poor and broken. And the parable about the publican, the tax collector. Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. That guy you can talk to. That guy you can have a conversation with. That guy you can release the kingdom into. This is another aspect of who we will go to in that process. All right, I want to move forward. Wow. You know how this is going to end, right? I mean, we all know the end of the story. This story is and it's going to open the door. The last three Parshas, Miketz and Vayigash and Vayeki, are all going to be about the other camp being actually in Egypt. Joseph is going to be in Egypt. He's going to get sold into slavery. What I'm sure he must have wondered what would happen when he was going to go to Shechem and find these brothers happens. And the way it unfolds is they see him coming. Here comes that dreamer. They label him. They hate him. And they make a plan to kill him. That says they actually planned to murder him. Strange how they didn't get to murder him. Something happened. Something big's about to happen. You see, God needs Joseph in Egypt. He needs him to go in chains. Because if he's not in chains, he ain't sticking around. Nobody in their right mind, even a Joseph, probably wouldn't stay if he didn't have to stay. So he's in chains, and he's sold. When he sold, where is he sold? He sold into a guy named Potiphar. Potiphar is the captain of the guard of Pharaoh. Isn't that interesting? Joseph had a date. There was something big happening, and the courts of heaven knew it, but Joseph didn't even know it. The courts of heaven know that he is setting things up, the Holy One is setting things up to put Joseph in a place to be the wild card in a grand redemptive plan that will shake the world and color it for now on until eternity and be the picture of Yeshua and what the Messiah will do in his day in that process, to be that prototypical image. And so he goes to Potiphar's house, but he can't stay in Potiphar's house. That's not where he's going to meet the guy that's going to get him into the court. He has to go somewhere to meet the guy who's going to introduce him to the court of Pharaoh. Where does he have to go? Don't tell him in advance. He won't want to go. He's going to have to go to prison. He's going to have to go to a specific prison. He's going to have to go to a prison for the worst state enemies, the enemies of the state of Egypt. Because that's where the guy's going to be that is going to introduce him to the courts of Pharaoh eventually. How is he going to get from the head steward of Potiphar's house, because he does everything to excellence and he does everything well, how is he going to get from there to prison? Don't tell him. Don't tell anybody, because if you tell them, they're going to run away as fast as they possibly can. I'll tell you how he's going to get there. He's going to be falsely accused of something he would never in a million years ever do by someone that is too high up in society for anyone to believe they could possibly be lying about this event. Mrs. P, the inimitable Mrs. P, Mrs. Potiphar, is going to lay her eyes upon him, and here's this boy well, I won't even go through the details. You can see how this should unfold. What's going on in Joseph as it's unveiling? How could I sin in this manner against God? Because, you see, my whole life is caught up in one word. Hineni. So he doesn't. And so the setup is perfect. And so as he runs away, gets away from her, squirming, getting away, she grabs, what did she grab? I don't know. She didn't grab the coat. It was part of the, she grabbed whatever garment he had, and he runs off, and he runs out the window. Well, some things said he jumped out the window, but he ran. And it's obvious. It's so set up, it's not even funny. The evidence is there. He's naked. She's got his coat. Who could possibly argue with this accusation? Me too. I mean, it's always got to be right? And so it has to be. She has to be telling the truth. And so the accusation is leveled. Everyone believes it. Maybe Potiphar has some questions, so he puts him in the prison, and now he's where he needs to be for the next stage of the plan, because eventually, somewhere down the road, after he rises to the place where he's actually one of the servants as opposed to just one of the inmates, he's one of the trustees. One day, the baker and the cupbearer have been imprisoned by Pharaoh because he's bad news. He just gets ticked off about stuff. There's all sorts of possible stories about why he sent his baker and his cupbearer. These are closest men to him. He sends them both to prison, and one of them's going to get out and one of them's not. We're going to see that next week. But as it stands right now, here comes the baker and the cupbearer, and there is no joy in them one night. The morning he wakes up, and they're all stressed out. They're all worried. And anybody know that Joseph had his own set of problems? Joseph had his own problems to deal with, and they were pretty significant. I mean, most of us would say that's a pretty significant issue. And Joseph looks at these guys who have had their life, they've been treated like superstars all their life, and he looks at them and they're sad. And he doesn't say, had it coming. You deserve every bit of it. He walks over, and he tries to help them. What kind of dude is this? They didn't deserve his compassion. They weren't his race. They weren't his ethnicity. They weren't his culture. They were part of the persecuting masses. They were in the courts of the one who ordered him in his prisons. Yeah. So here they are, and he asks them their dreams. They tell him they had a dream. Each one had a dream. And he tells them the dream. Or they tell him the dream. And he tells the cupbearer, he says, well, these grapes, the vine, you saw a vine and the grapes, and it was being squeezed into Pharaoh's cup, and this is good news for you, because what's going to happen is that you're going to return to your position as cupbearer, and you will again pour the grapes, make the wine, and serve the Pharaoh again. That's good news. By this time, the baker's saying, well, this is good. This is good. Here's my dream. I was making bread for Pharaoh, and I was carrying it, and I had it in a basket on my head, and it was open, and birds came, and they started eating, pecking on the bread. And Joseph says, well, I would say I've got good news and I got bad news, but it's all bad news. It's all bad news here, brother. What's going to happen is you're seeing death. The bird of prey is the bird of death. You're not interacting with anything. You're not engaging like the vine was alive. The grapes were real. It was live, living juice. You were engaged in this situation. These birds are going to eat your flesh. They're going to hit your brain. Well, and so now what happens is the cupbearer is saying, all right, I guess I have hope. I have hope. Now, he was still in prison, right? He was still in his bondage. He was still in disfavor. But he had one thing he didn't have before Joseph spoke to him. He had hope. Do you now get it? I mean, are you now putting the dots together? This is what we're supposed to bring to the earth. We can't guarantee them when they'll get out. We can't where the freedom comes. We can't guarantee them that they're getting favor all of a sudden. Everything will go hunky-dory and wonderful. What we can give them is hope. We are peddlers, merchants of hope. If you're not a merchant of hope, You're not a follower of the creator of the universe. You are not a follower of Yeshua. If you are a merchant of despair, if you're a merchant of frustration, if you're not singing joy to the world, but you're singing oi to the world, then it does not mean you are not going to hell. I'm not going to get into that issue. It does mean that you are not at this time representing the creating of the universe. You're not representing the kingdom of heaven. You are entering into something that is poisonous to the kingdom, because our job is to be merchants of hope to people who are in desperate need of hope. We're not here to debate with rabbis about theology or preachers about theology. We're not here to argue over how to pronounce a name. We're not here to argue over a label or what that means or who's a cult. We're not here to get issues of how your doctrine's better than my doctrine or mine's better than yours. We're not here to argue whether the right side of the political spectrum is right or wrong, or the left side is right or wrong, or better or not. We are here to do one thing. We only have one job: to be merchants of hope. Hello, everybody. Are you awake? Are you hearing me in the room? If we're going to be ready for the anti-Messiah, if we're going to be ready for the beast and the false prophet, and be ready for the persecutions that come, if we're going to be ready for the time to come, we got to be merchants of hope. We know how it ends. We know who's in charge. We know what he is doing. He's bringing good things to earth. He's bringing redemption. That's the whole plan. It's not to destroy people. It's to bring redemption and restoration to households and bloodlines and individuals and nations, and to bring restoration to the earth and to every square inch of it, and to make it back like a Garden of Eden again. This is the good news. We are messengers of hope. So Vayashev is sort of our climax of the patriarchal part of the narrative. The rest of the book is going to be, the rest of Parsha, Sefer Bereshit, the book of Genesis, is all about the Messianic promise in the end of days and how it unveils itself in the midst of all the trials and tribulations. We have gone through, since Parsha Lech Lecha, the third week of the Parsha, we've had 7 weeks. And I told you about this chiasm and how it rises like a wave. That we had Lech Lecha and we had Vayera. The weeks, every week we had a different section. Had Lech Lecha, had Vayera, had Chayei at the crest of the wave, we had Toldot. And we had this picture in the middle of it where Yitzhak and Rivka are thriving in a famine. And they're bringing hope, and they're not making war with people. They're learning how to cope with whatever situation takes place. That was the crest of the wave. And then we see it begin to fall down after Toldot. We begin to see Vayetzi, and we see Vayashlach. And here we are now at Vayashev. And this is the conclusion of the patriarchal narratives. Every year, this is the guts and the substance of what the message of the Torah and what Yeshua's message was as well. We are here for a reason. It is not a theological or a political or an ideological reason. We are here to be messengers of hope, and we're to do it in a way in which we keep our calm, keep our shalom, keep our faith, keep our hope in ourselves, keep joy coming forth and exuding from ourselves no matter what our circumstances, and in so doing, leave a foundation, establish a point of communication with even those who do not deserve it and who we could feel like probably should be punished or threatened or hated or excluded. But the Holy One says, no, that's exactly the ones I want. Well, it's time to say goodbye to the folks on the camera now behind the lens. I thank you for joining us today. I bless you and your home and your household, your country, your nation. Thank you, New Zealand, and thank you, Australia. You're already past this Parsha into the next one. I know that. You've already entered the next day. You're in the third day of Hanukkah, and I get that. But thank you for joining us and being part of our fellowship. Also for Israel, for South Africa, for Zimbabwe, for all the nations of the sub-Saharan continent there, for Spain, for France, for England. Father, thank you for joining us. We welcome you and bless you. For Canada, for Mexico, for South America, for all those who will join us and be with us as part of this at a later date. We bless you. We thank you. Please, for all those who would, just please leave your name and maybe the place you're from. And any prayer request, any comment, any question you might have, I assure you, I go through every one of them, and I pray for every single person that leaves a comment, and for their country, and for their family. So please do that. We'll see you next week. Shabbat Shalom. Hanukkah Sameach. We bless you. Amen.